What is going on, everyone? It's Troi. I'm here again for another video. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. See, I didn't really clap. But anyway, I am here to share with you guys the book that I'm currently reading, which is a part of the hashtag Read So Lit read along. Well, it wouldn't even be a part. It actually is what the read along book is that Dee chose for this particular year of 2020. But as you guys know, Dee always chooses a read along book that we read of a black author in the month of February, of course, Black History Month, and Read So Lit. There's a schedule involved. I'll put a link to her channel down below, as well as the Goodreads group that you can go to engage and converse with other readers, as there are some threads that's going to coincide with the schedule of this reading. But to get to the point, this book is a bangers. It got me, all right. Nonetheless, that book is The Last Thing You Surrender by Leonard Jr. And I am on page 82 here. You can see my little cute bookmark that I bought a long time ago. But anyway, what is this book about? Because you know we have to get into that, right? So The Last Thing You Surrender is, categorically, it's a historical fiction book that takes place almost immediately after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So we're looking at the World War II era, as that is probably the primary kind of thread in all this, and the three narrative stories that's going to take place here. But paring that down, it does take place in Mobile, Alabama. You know, my state. I ain't been to Mobile but like 2 times in my life, but it takes place in Mobile, Alabama during the segregated South. But if you're looking at the 3 characters that are the principal characters that's going to carry this story, they're all interconnected. The first character that is introduced in this book is a white Marine named George. At the beginning of the book, George is basically in his bunk, in his skivvies, unprepared and unaware that his ship that he's on, his battleship as a Marine, is approaching being bombed. It is subsequently bombed. Things go crazy, the blaring of alarms, and unfortunately for George, as he's stuck in his bunk, he ends up injuring his hip as well as breaking some of his fingers. So that leaves him in this very desolate place in which he's going to need a lot of assistance for him to survive, because here is this ship that's been bombed, and hey, we got the bulkheads twisting this way, we got the mess hall chairs going that way, and of course we got flooding, rising water that's filled with sewage and, girl, they say hydraulic fluids as well, or oil. But fortunately for him, as he is approaching this point where he's going to give up, this black mess hall cook named Gordy comes to his rescue. Gordy ends up assisting George out of this. The two of them traverse throughout the ship, but unfortunately throughout their escape, Gordy perishes away and George lives to see another day, lives to go about the possibilities of going home and getting married as he had planned. So both George's survival as well as Gordy's death weighs very heavy on George. But it's at this point where he is in Honolulu in this makeshift recovery that's outfitted from a gymnasium, where some of his superiors come along. You know, they are very aware of this black man saving his life, and his superiors see that as a tool of sorts, a tool to raise the morale of American men to enlist into this war, because they need those hands, they need those assistants, and it's getting, you know, World War II we're talking about. So being aware of George's tale of survival, they are using him to be like this tool, this instrument that they're going to connect him with Gordy's widow. And with the two of them combined, they're going to tour the country on this campaign in which they're going to give these speeches that's going to, like I said, raise the morale of the American people to get them to enlist into this war. Under the adage that we're all together now, that, you know, it's going to spearhead this campaign. So obviously George is a principal character, right? So in conjunction with him, we're going to be looking at Gordy's widow, Thelma, who is probably the next principal character. She has her own story, but what I'm loving so far that I've read of her is both that there's an interesting, kind of sad connection between how her and Gordy became an item, if you will. And what is interesting at the point in which I'm reading this book now is that with that whole adage I said of we're all in this, all of us together, you know, that whole thing or whatever, I almost want to say propaganda, but we don't do that right now. But the point is that as far as what I've gotten to, she is taking her own steps towards contributing to the war effort here during this time. But you're looking at George, you're looking at Thelma, but there's one more principal character who is the opposition force between the two, and that is actually Luther. Luther is Thelma's older brother, and it's really interesting because while Thelma was in diapers and Luther was probably about a toddler or a little bit older than that, he and she actually witnessed the lynching of both their mother and their father. So Luther does not have that much encouragement in mind as it concerns him putting in himself as a product of this war effort. So he's very adamant, very dogged, very determined, and very angry about this whole prospect of his sister connecting with this white Marine who try to spread this message of morale to enlist more people to contribute themselves to this war. But anyway, I'm not really that far, but I'm far enough to know that I can see a couple of things that are about to take place. But what's interesting about this book is from two different things that I've gathered so far. Number one, it pulls you right in. It pulls you right on down in. It almost is like watching a movie in some points, but it pulls you right on in. But another thing that I'm really enjoying about this book is it puts me on the fence with a lot of things. It's like I can see some of the perspective of both Thelma, as well as I said, she of course is going to take her own efforts towards contributing to the war, and I can see also that of Luther's. So this book, from even the pages that I've read so far, it asks a lot of questions to the reader. It asks a lot of questions. So you might be like me, conflicted in some areas. At some points I'd be mad. At some points I'd be like, yeah, you right, Thelma, you right. But you know what I'm saying? So that is really one of the very big key engagement factors that I'm loving about this book, is that even as I'm reading it, even as I'm falling into the story, it is asking me a lot of, it's causing me to ask myself a lot of questions about where I would stand between these three characters and their individual as well as combining motivations. Anyway, guys, that is it. As always, love yourself, read all the books that you want to read. And child, let me say something. Step out in this world and just let everybody know you ain't got to prove nothing to nobody. So don't even ask why I do what I do. And on that note, see you later.